Everyone handed him the throne. His generals, the senators, the people, they all wanted the same thing, America's first king, and he said no. But here's the truth they never told you. George Washington didn't turn down power out of pure humility. He did it out of fear. And that fear came from a place much darker than you'd imagine. Once you hear this story, you'll realize everything history taught you was incomplete. Virginia. When George Washington was born, this land wasn't America yet. He was just a farm kid, middle class, ordinary, quiet, but that silence was deceiving. From a young age, George realized one thing: life was a game played by the powerful. His father, Augustine, died when George was only 11. Just like said Charles over, he sought refuge in the shadow of his older brother, Lawrence, a brilliant, charismatic officer in the British Army. George watched him, he learned from him, he wanted to be him. But Lawrence's time was short too. Tuberculosis in 1752, Lawrence died. At 20, George was fatherless, brotherless, and completely alone. Right here the spot most historians miss something inside. George snapped. Losing the people he loved taught him a brutal lesson: nothing lasts. Not people, not power, not even sacrifice. That realization would eventually change the course of history. George just didn't know it yet. But here's the shocker. The real reason Washington walked away from power was hidden in that childhood trauma. A secret that stayed buried for decades: the French and Indian War. Washington stepped onto the battlefield for the first time at 22, and his first run was a total disaster. Fought necessity. He was forced to retreat by French forces. He had to sign a surrender document. Did his hands shake while holding that paper? We don't know. But after that day, people noticed the look in his eyes had changed. He accepted the defeat, but he made a mental note: power doesn't protect you. Power makes you a target. Years later, that lesson would save him. The war raged on. In 1755, during the Battle of the Monongahela, 2 horses were shot out from under him, for bullets ripped through his coat. Yet, Washington survived. Everyone around him was dying, but he kept standing. Was it luck? Was it fate? Washington never asked out loud. But his journals suggest that from that day on, he never felt truly free again. It was as if surviving had put him in debt. And that debt would eventually become his prison. This is where everything shifted. Washington wasn't just a soldier anymore. Without realizing it, he was becoming a symbol. And symbols have nowhere to hide. So war ends. Washington was exhausted. Not just physically, his soul was tired. He went back to Virginia, to Mount Vernon. That plantation on the banks of the Potomac. Green hills, quiet mornings, the smell of the earth, and Martha Custis. A calm, wealthy widow. George married her, and for the first time in his life, he could finally breathe. Mount Vernon wasn't just a home. It was his identity. Because Washington didn't want to be a commander. He wanted to be a farmer. He wanted to work the land, harvest his crops, and sit with Martha in the evenings. You can feel this longing in every letter he wrote. Mount Vernon was his freedom, and it felt like freedom was only there to be taken away. Because 1775 arrived, and everything changed. Philadelphia. The Second Continental Congress, the room was packed. Representatives from the colonies were all there. War with England was inevitable, and someone had to lead the army. Washington walked in like everyone else, but he did one specific thing. He wore his old military uniform. Was it an accident? Maybe, but John Adams noticed. When the vote started, Adams nominated Washington. George left the room while they deliberated. When he was called back in, the vote was unanimous. Everyone stood up. What was he feeling? We know because he wrote to Martha that night, "I accept this task with great distress. I do not think myself equal to this command." Was that humility? Oh, it was genuine fear. Washington had seen it before. Power changes people. It consumes them. And power destroys the person wielding it most of all. He could sense the real intentions of those who wanted to make him king. Some believed in him, but others just wanted a shield to hide behind. He knew the game. And he accepted anyway? Why? Wait, don't miss this detail. Because behind Washington's yes was a calculation almost no one talks about. Once you understand this move, everything else clicks. Washington was a reader, a big one. And the name he studied most was Julius Caesar, that Caesar was loved by the people. Caesar was worshipped by his army. Caesar was seen as the man who saved the Republic. And in the end, Caesar was the man who swallowed the Republic whole. Washington knew this, his biggest fear. Becoming America's Caesar, he wasn't afraid of being powerful. He was afraid of getting used to it, because once power gets under your skin, it doesn't leave. You start d'être indispensable. And Washington knew exactly what the indispensable man does. He never lets go. This is why, throughout the war, he kept reminding himself, "I don't own this country. I'm just looking after it." Saying it was easy. Doing it was a different story because 1783 came. The war ended, and voices began to rise from within the army. Newburgh, New York, 1783. The war was technically won, but Congress was broke. The soldiers hadn't been paid in months. Patience was gone. A dangerous idea was spreading among the officers, make Washington king, or at least convince him to use the army against Congress. Secret letters were written. A meeting was called. When Washington, what did he do? He walked right into the meeting. Everyone was stunned. The commander himself was there. The room went dead silent. Washington took the stage and started to speak. He wasn't angry. He wasn't even calm. He was just tired. And you could hear that exhaustion in every word. He told his officers, "I've been through everything with you. Your pain is my pain. But what you're about to do will destroy everything we fought for." Then he pulled a letter from Congress out of his pocket. He tried to read it. He hesitated. And then he took out a pair of glasses. "Gentlemen," he said softly, "you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have not only grown grey but almost blind in the service of my country." The room went silent. That one sentence, that one moment of vulnerability crushed the rebellion. The officers wept. They abandoned their plans. Washington put his glasses back on, read the letter, and walked out. Outside, he was alone. What did he feel in that moment? We don't know. That night, he wrote nothing. Just silence. You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. This man won the war, stopped a coup, and then did the last thing the world expected. December 23rd, 1783, Annapolis, Maryland. Washington stood before Congress. He held his sword in his hand. And then he laid it on the table. He was resigning his commission. The men in that room, Thomas Mifflin, James McHenry, they all cried. Some of them still shook when they wrote about it years later. Because this had never happened in history. A victorious commander, after winning a war, just giving up power voluntarily, without being forced. When King George III of England heard the news, he said, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." He did it. But why? The answer is still there, in that childhood loss on those battlefields in that night at Newburgh. Washington realized that real power doesn't belong to the one who holds it, but to the one who can let it go. Holding on is easy. Letting go takes courage. Believe it or not, the story doesn't end here. Washington gave up power. And a few years later, they called him back, and this time, saying no was even harder. Mount Vernon, 1784. Washington was finally home. He was farming, waking up early to check the fields, spending his evenings with Martha. Was he happy? According to his letters, yes. Felt true peace, but America wasn't finished yet. The new country was shaking. States were fighting each other. The economy was crashing. They needed a new constitution. The Philadelphia Convention, the call came again. Come, be president. Your country needs you. Washington sat at his desk for a long time. He didn't want to go, but he couldn't stay. That contradiction, the tension between personal freedom and historical duty, was the essence of his entire life. He went. He was elected the first president of the United States by a unanimous vote. He served 2 terms. And then, when no one expected it, he resigned again. Because Washington's greatest legacy wasn't the battles he won. It wasn't even the country he founded. His greatest legacy was knowing when to walk away. What you've seen so far is just the surface. Washington's decision changed the world in ways we still feel today. In fact, your life has been shaped by this choice without you even knowing it. Think about it today. How many leaders have given up power of their own free will? Throughout history, countless kings, emperors, and dictators have done everything to stay in control. They fought. They killed. They destroyed. Washington did something different, and that difference became the foundation of modern democracy. The presidents who followed him kept the 2-term tradition alive until it became law in 1951, but even before it was law. Washington's example was enough. Why was he able to do it? Because the pain of his childhood, the loneliness of the battlefield, and the exhaustion of that night in Newburgh led him to one truth. Power doesn't make you bigger. Power tests you. Washington passed that test every single day with every decision he made. His greatest victory wasn't won on a battlefield. It was won when he laid his sword on the table and walked away. Washington had it, and then he walked away. Washington's story doesn't end here. In our next video, we're uncovering a secret about him that's never been told. If you don't want to miss it, subscribe right now. Don't forget to like these videos. Only keep going because of your support, and drop a comment below which part of this story hits you the hardest.